For 20 years, this doctor examined the bodies of dead children in an attempt to understand what killed them. No one believed in his work. Sidney Farber, who was called the Doctor for the Dead, became the man to whom we owe the existence of modern chemotherapy, as well as a special attitude towards young patients in children's hospitals. Sidney Farber was born to Polish immigrants on September 30, 1903. The eastern outskirts of Buffalo, USA were not a place for excellent schooling, and it was quite expensive for the Farber family to educate all 14 children. But the father of the family had his own method. At home, the children spoke their native Yiddish, read books in German, and learned English by immersion on the street. Simon, the head of the family, brought the children all the textbooks he could get and encouraged all useful activities. Sidney gained a sufficient base to enter the University of Buffalo first, and after graduation, go to study in Europe. To pay for his studies, he worked part-time in concert halls and restaurants playing the violin. This income helped him graduate from one university, complete his education at 2 German universities, and then return to America. Fascinated by medicine, Farber entered Harvard Medical School in Boston, which was extremely difficult for a Jewish young man in those years. In 1929, the doctor, who had already married, got his first job not related to music. Children's Hospital in Boston needed a pathologist, and Farber began spending 12 hours a day in the pathology room. For his passion, he was nicknamed the Doctor for the Dead. The young specialist spent more time with the dead than other doctors did with the living. For the next 10 years, Farber researched the causes of sudden infant death, fatal childhood diseases, and studied the stage of disease development. As a result, by 1937, the first classification of tumors in children and the textbook autopsy appeared, and a decade later, Farber became the chief physician of Boston Hospital. Farber's new position was not particularly exciting. The new chief medical officer spent more and more time in laboratories, trying to understand the mechanism of the deadly disease of children, leukemia. Having spent 20 years in a prognosticator's room, the Doctor for the Dead wanted to help the living. Leukemia as a disease was first described in the mid-19th century, but even in the 40s of the 20th century, with all the prosperity of the pharmaceutical industry, blood cancer remained as deadly as ever. Patients died a few weeks after diagnosis, and often the death was painful. Cortisone therapy, which was prescribed at the last stage of the disease, did not help, and doctors threw up their hands. Leukemia was incurable. However, Dr. Farber was more optimistic. The dynamics of leukemia could be studied using a microscope. This means that there are chances of finding drugs suitable for fighting cancer. The title of Doctor for the Dead will haunt Farber for a long time, when after numerous studies, he realized which drug was needed to block the reproduction of white blood cells and achieve the first remission results in 60% of children with leukemia. His article in New England Journal of Medicine was met with negative reviews. Someone who has spent his entire life in a basement laboratory could not have come up with a discovery of this magnitude. Dr. Farber was not interested in feedback. He had seen the result of the therapy and believed that cancer could be cured, if not completely, then at least halted. But he needed money for new research and treatment of children. Bill Coster became interested in the article about the new cancer drug and the idea of the possibility of such treatment. The founder of the charitable organization invited Farber to tell people that children with leukemia can get a new chance for life and health. That's how the story of Jimmy, who loves baseball, was broadcast on the radio. The boy Jimmy, whose real name was Einar Gustafsson, was a patient of Farber's. He was undergoing treatment for lymphoma, and in the program he told how much he loved baseball and how he dreamed of watching his favorite team's games. But since he has to live in the hospital, he can't watch the programs. The host urged listeners to donate small amounts, as little as 25 cents, to the cancer fund to help Jimmy fulfill his dream and help all other children with blood cancer get a cure. The 10-minute program brought in $250,000 in donations, and for the first half of the 20th century, this was a huge amount, comparable to $25 million today. That's how the Jimmy Fund was born, and a brand new TV set was installed in the child's ward. Farber's revolutionary discovery proved that cancer can be far, Thanks to the Jimmy Fund, new drugs were developed for treatment, and people learned that blood cancer in a child is not a death sentence. Farber himself said that the fight against cancer requires the greatest mobilization of natural, human, and financial resources, and famous actors, athletes, and large companies began to help the foundation. Thus, in 1952, a specialized children's clinic was opened. At the Jimmy Fund Hospital, Farber paid attention not only to drug therapy. He considered the emotional state to be as important a factor in treatment as drugs. Therefore, the entire staff worked as a team. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Popeye the Sailor, and Snow White, with all the dwarfs, were painted on the walls. Toys were laid out in the wards and corridors, and all the staff were so caring that the children did not perceive the hospital as a medical facility. Farber's motto was, "While the children are in the clinic, we are their family." In 1969, the Jimmy Fund Clinic was able to treat adult patients as well. Farber tirelessly studied new combinations of drugs and radiation therapy. He isolated a special type of tumor, known today as Farber's disease, into a separate disease, and constantly fought with the US authorities for the allocation of funds to institutes and clinics. Thanks to the work of the father of chemotherapy, clinical research and therapy centers were opened at the US National Cancer Institute, and millions of people received a new chance at life.